let's just get it over with. 2011 was a defining year for video games. DSs evolved into the third dimension. The world became cubes. Humanity was graced with one of the greatest games of all time. And then, that November, we faced a catastrophe. The star was sundered, time compressed. The blight spread to all mother crystals, and from the abyss, out came... On that day, the world was changed forever. Such devastation. That was its intention. I was there. That's exactly how it happened. The Legend of Zelda. Such a phenomenal series beloved by millions around the globe. Each game a timeless classic in its own right. They're all memorable, impactful, and just fun to play. Then there's Skyward Sword. And the DS games, but we're not talking about them, so... Also, side note before we go on, I hate saying Legend of Zelda, and even more so, The Legend of Zelda. So, from now on, I'm just gonna say Zelda to refer to the series. Deal with it. Skyward Sword originally released back in 2011 for the Wii as part of the Zelda 25th anniversary celebration. Honestly, if someone gave me this as a 25th anniversary gift, I would be not happy. A month later, we got the first Zelda lore book, the Hyrule Historia, as part of the same campaign. I do not like this game. In fact, I'd go as far as to say, I hate it. Yes, I prefer Triforce Heroes over this, and I do not say that lightly. Skyward Sword left such a profound impact on me and my taste in games when it first came out, that it was the first game I actually dropped out of anger. Twice! And I never drop games out of anger. Only once I truly, truly abhor. Like Returnal. Still on the floor, by the way. But you know what? It's been just over 10 years. I've changed and so has my perspective on games. I want to give it another shot because maybe it's actually a very good Zelda game. Maybe I've been wrong all these years. Maybe I was blinded by my first and second and third impressions of the game. Maybe I was blinded by the bad controls. Maybe my hate for it was misplaced. It doesn't matter. I want to give Skyward Sword another look because if no other Zelda game, this one deserves it. And hey, maybe I'll come out the end with a new favorite Zelda game. I won't. I won't. It really is such a magical feeling playing a new Zelda game for the first time, isn't it? Sitting down, getting comfortable, and knowing you're about to embark on a grand adventure that will set the standard for games to come. It's a momentous occasion, so what are we waiting for? What? Yeah, one major thing about Skyward Sword is that unlike most other Wii games, you cannot play with a regular Wii remote. If you take a look at the front of the box, you'll notice a little blue seal that says Required Wii Motion Plus / Wii Remote Plus. Wii Motion Plus being an accessory for the Wii Remote that claims to improve the motion controls. Now, I wasn't aware that you needed it to play the game when I bought it at Walmart. So, when I got home and tried to start playing, of course, I couldn't. The game does not let you progress from this screen if you don't have both a nunchuck and Wii Motion Plus. Needless to say, I was not happy that I was unable to play the game that I had just bought. So what did I do, you ask? Well, I did what any sane person would do. I went right back to Walmart and grabbed a Wii remote upside down. I went right back to Walmart and bought a Wii remote with Wii Motion Plus included. Took me 2 trips to Walmart to play this game. So now that we do have Wii Motion Plus, we can we can proceed with this fun game. Starting the game, you're hit with the completely unexpected revelation that Gasp, the protagonist and player character, is Link. That's never happened before, has it? He sees a giant liver with teeth, and he's awoken by a giant bird. These birds are called Loftwings, and they're essentially the horses of this world. In this game, though, Link is not some kid from the Kokiri village or hallucinating after touching the Triforce. I don't care what the new Zelda timeline says. He's just some guy at the Officers Academy in Skyloft trying to decide whether he'll join the Black Eagles or waste his time with the Blue Lions or Golden Deer. You heard me. The Blue Loftwing delivered a letter from Zelda saying today is the day of the Battle of the Eagle and Lion, and Link should meet her soon. This begins one of the longest tutorial segments in any Zelda game, to the point of it being painful. You're shown the basics like locking on, the new ability to run and use it to climb up certain obstacles at the cost of stamina, a new gauge that depletes as Link does certain actions, which Breath of the Wild would later adopt and refine. Link's Loftwing doesn't show up when you call it, and that's a problem, I guess. Turns out Groose here, everyone's favorite character for some reason. Seriously, why do people like him? He's a creep. Hid Link's red Loftwing. Spoiler, it's behind the waterfall, and to get it back you need a sword to cut down the sticks. But the sword... Oh... no. Playing this game again is, I'm not feeling too okay right now. Zelda teaches us how to fly on the Loftwing, we win a race against Groose and his friends, and Zelda pushes us off the goddess statue, and Skyward Sword goes from being a video game to causing me physical pain. Zelda also teaches us how to use the sailcloth when landing from high altitudes. But right then, the controls decided to stop working and Link went wherever he wanted, no matter how I moved the controller. Zelda must have been looking down at Link and thinking, Houston, we have a problem. Or as they say in Houston, we have a problem. Look, I have many problems with the game, but they're all minor ones. They're by no means deal breakers. In truth, I have 3 key issues that I cannot look past. 3 things in the game that completely ruin the gameplay experience. I'll go into each one as we go on in detail, but as for the first one, key issue number 1, the controls. The controls are terrible. They are awful. I'm not trying to make a joke or exaggerate for comedic effect. No, they do not work. Simple as that. Back during that first E3 presentation, you can clearly see the motion controls failing to be controlled by the motion. But maybe it was an earlier build. Maybe they fixed something between the presentation and release. You could argue that, yeah. But it's not difficult to notice they didn't fix a single thing after just a few minutes of playing. The way to play Skyward Sword is with the previously stated Wii Motion Plus Wii Remote combo. That's not annoying to say. And Nunchuck, a setup that works generally well for games like Mario Galaxy, but it doesn't take too long to notice Link tends to forget how hands work, and the sword goes wherever it wants. It goes everywhere except where it's supposed to be, and this, of course, is a problem in a game that expects a relative amount of precision with the motion controls. Even with Wii Motion Plus, the game loses track of how your hand is positioned, and this doesn't happen once or twice per game session, it happens constantly. To fix this, you have to recalibrate the controller by suffocating the Wii remote for a good 10 seconds, and you're good to go for the next few minutes. It really is terrible because it's constant. You'll never spend more than 10 minutes without having to stop everything you're doing just to make the controls work close to as intended, until soon after you have to stop everything you're doing again. And then you realize the game expects you to use the nunchuck's very limited motion control for things like the shield or rolling, and like with the sword, it does not work. Sure, maybe it's a me thing, right? Maybe it's just my controller that isn't, or wasn't, working as intended. Maybe you didn't have the same experience, and that's fine. However, the frequency with which the controls literally died on me is just unforgivable. It completely destroyed any and all potential enjoyment I could have from the game even well over a decade later. So Link decides to land inside the circle. Link and Zelda go to McDonald's until they stop going to McDonald's, and Link hears the voice of... Ah! A hell demon. This is Fi, and she is the game's Navi or Midna. But more importantly, she is just the worst character in the Zelda series. She's a spirit of the Goddess Sword and provides one more tutorial. The new major gimmick in this game is the Skyward Strike. You know how games like Zelda 1, Zelda 2, or Breath of the Wild let you shoot a beam of light when you have full health? Well, this time around, you can use the sword beam at any time regardless of your health by bringing the sword skyward. Get it? Doing so, the sword begins lighting up from top to bottom, and once it's charged up, swinging it will shoot the beam in the direction of the swing, including diagonal stabs and spins. It's interesting in concept and it's fun to mess around with, but not exactly effective. You do need to use it for some puzzles, some enemies that you really have no choice but to use it, or one specific boss, but as an attack, it just is not good as it barely deals any damage and needs to be charged every time, so doing a simple swing instead of the beam is almost always the way to go. Though, in the end, it gets a pass because I find it funny how Link kind of clicks into place when starting the animation, and because of how dumb he looks while running and charging. Fi also gives you this ancient stone tablet that lets you go down to the surface world in search of Zelda, an area previously inaccessible because to the people of Skyloft, the world below the clouds is a place of legends. Even Loftwings won't fly that low. Diving through the new opening in the clouds takes us to Faron Woods, the first major area of Skyward Sword. And the controls, they just... Nope! I'm done. I tried. I wanted to like it, okay? I tried. The original idea was for me to play through the entirety, or at least most of, the Wii version of Skyward Sword, but I couldn't. Remember how last episode I said one of the games that made me me? One of the games that made me me. Oh wow, second past Melly. So dramatic, so impactful. You really think you're something, huh? Yeah, well, you know what? This game also made me me. But for all the wrong reasons! I can't bring myself to play this game again. I just can't. Oh, Divine One, not again. There's a Switch port. And it's playable, believe it or not. It's 1-to-1 with the original though, no post-game or extra content, nothing like that. The only actual changes are the visuals, which, looking back at the Wii footage, is just unbelievable. It looks so much better, and the controls, they actually work now. However, these changes aren't exactly perfect. To account for the Switch Lite not having detachable Joy-Cons, Skyward Sword HD has two control options. A more traditional controller setup that you can use with a Pro Controller or on handheld mode, and the one they definitely want you to use, the much improved motion controls with the Joy-Cons. But they kinda work now. I mean, that's a pretty low bar all things considered. You know, a can of Walmart SpaghettiOs has better motion controls than Skyward Sword on Wii, but it's still a can of Walmart SpaghettiOs. I can't play Radiant Dawn with this! It's not even gluten-free! The whole thing about having to suffocate the Wii remote to recalibrate it every 10 seconds is gone. Now you just press the Y button to center the sword. That's it. Wow, this alone makes the game not as painful as the original. The A button interacts, hold down B to run, and ZR to use items. Aside from that, with this setup, the right stick gives you full camera control, which is a godsend, and the motion controls are overall much better. I didn't have as many issues with Link holding the sword in wonky positions as before, or hell, in the 4 hours I played of the original. But that's not to say it's without its faults, because when they decide to stop working, they completely stop working. Plus, all the issues with Joy-Cons and their distance from the console apply. I actually couldn't use the motion controls when sitting at my desk, less than 8 feet away from the Switch. As for the standard controller layout, all the buttons and triggers work the same, except the sword is now controlled with the right stick at the cost of camera control. Pushing the right stick up swings up, pressing R3 is a stab, you get the idea. While, yeah, this setup means you don't have to deal with the constant recalibration, I don't know, it just doesn't feel as intuitive to me. Sometimes pushing the stick in any direction doesn't register, so you swing once and position your sword left instead of swinging left twice, if that makes sense. It feels more like a control scheme made out of necessity rather than to improve the game experience, and it shows. It works, it's fine, but losing camera control is far from ideal. It's clear that the ideal way to play this game is with Joy-Cons, especially now that the motion control issues are solved with just, pressing Y. That much is clear because when Skyward Sword HD released, Nintendo also made these beautiful Master Sword and Hylian Shield themed Joy-Cons exclusively for use by the right-handed tyranny. These are just the most beautiful Joy-Cons they've made so far. They feel like a genuine celebration of the series, and I never use them because I don't want to ruin them. In the end, Skyward Sword was clearly designed with motion controls in mind. And in a sick and wrong-feeling way, I prefer to play it that way. I mean, I probably prefer ketchup with garlic, but I'll still hate it.
Not actually doing this, am I?
Along with the Joy-Cons, they released a beautiful Zelda and Loftwing amiibo that lets you go up to the sky wherever you are, not needing to use one of those bird statues. Excuse me? Yeah, it's kinda scummy to lock out such a nice quality of life improvement behind an amiibo paywall, but I have an amiibo buying problem that won't be cured until Nintendo stops making them, so I bought it. Nothing else. It's one of the nicest looking amiibo. Ahem! So now that we can continue playing, before we can proceed through these massive stone doors, we need to get down to the bottom of the sealed grounds and strike this thing. Why do we need to do this, you ask? Why are we playing this game in the first place? There's only 3 areas to explore on the surface in this game, and as you explore them, you can find the typical Zelda items, hearts, rupees, but this time you can also find insects to catch with the bug net that you can kill with your sword, by the way, treasures that can be found in the world or dropped by enemies, and the new stamina fruit that completely refills Link's stamina. Faron Woods is the first area up, a typical forest area with lots of trees, fake Nopon, the works. It's a nice looking area, and honestly, the same applies to the rest of the game. The art direction is very appealing. Everything from the building to the nature to the landscapes look simply magical. The impressionist art look to it all has always stood out to me, and you know what? Even I have to say this is one of the most beautiful Zelda games, easily up there with Wind Waker or Link's Awakening Remake. The same though, I can't say for the characters. At the Skyview Temple, after doing the surprisingly fun boss keep it, we meet the last key player in the story, Girahim, a demon lord who acts as the main antagonist for a while. But he doesn't look like a villain or even remotely menacing. Instead, he looks like he wants to talk to my manager until he... Oh my god, ugh. No, goodbye, thanks, bye, nope, no. He does look more interesting and, for lack of a better term, evil looking as time goes on though. As for the other character designs, I don't know if I like them or not. Let me explain. From a purely artistic standpoint, yeah, they're all solid. Not great, but solid. The recurring characters like Beetle all look how they should. But then you have Groose. Look, I know he's a meme, and he is better later on, but his face just... no. Other NPCs around Skyloft and the rest of the sky range from forgettable to just okay to terrible. Straight up terrible. Zelda looks fine also, despite this being a lower tier design compared to, say, Breath of the Wild, or hell, even Twilight Princess. It's very basic. Impa looks great, young Impa that is, but the real issue I have with the character designs in this game, one that I am sure nobody expected me to bring up, is Link. I hate this Link. This is the worst Link design by far, no doubt whatsoever. Just look at him. Maybe it's my bias talking, but just look at him. He has this constant look of I don't care, as if he were Squall from Final Fantasy VIII. The cell shading on his skin makes him look weirdly pink at times. He has such strangely defined cat-like features in the worst way possible. This is just the ugliest looking Link of them all, and Fi... there's nothing I can say about Fi that hasn't been said to death already. Fi bad. 5. Whatever. After Girahim grabs your sword a few times, he goes down and you realize the traditional Zelda formula is present and accounted for in this game. Go to new place, enter dungeon, get item to finish dungeon, fight boss, repeat. And that isn't necessarily a bad thing, it works for this game because it's one of the more linear games in the Zelda series. But it's also the most repetitive one. Placing the new segment of the tablet over in Skyloft opens the way to Eldin Volcano in search of Zelda, where you do the same thing you did in Faron Woods. Find your way to the dungeon, get item, and this time, fight a sentient ball of lava and rocks with bombs as if they were bowling balls. Go back and place the final segment of the tablet in Skyloft and head to Lanayru Desert with these hermit crabs that I swear read your mind, and time shift stones, these blue rocks that can turn back time within a predetermined area. Wait. They're blue, and they have time powers. Does that mean... Real talk, time shift stones are one of the best mechanics, not just in this game, but in the whole series. It's such an interesting way of interacting with the world and adds an incredible layer of depth to the story. Anyway, you carry on, go through a factory, watch it get lumed and unlumed constantly. Just a normal day for us since they arrive to radically raise the cost of a basic human necessity and deprive us of access to it on a daily basis in order to force us all out. Fuck Luma. And reverse vacuum a scorpion with weird textures. Once outside, we find Zelda finally, but of course, Girahim appears. Zelda and Impa escape through a giant gear, and Girahim just... leaves. So far, controls aside, the game's good, right? It's been fun enough, the dungeons have been fine, the bosses have been pretty good, so we're good. That's it, fun's over, pack up, we're done here. The Imprisoned is just the worst. It's the worst part of this or any other Zelda game, bar none. The Imprisoned walks up the slope of the sealed grounds and you have to defeat it before it reaches the temple at the top. The way to do so is to destroy its weird jiggly toes on both its legs until it falls back. Then strike the thing on its head 3 times and it goes down. Doesn't sound so bad when I say it like that, does it? That's because this is only the first time we fight the Imprisoned. Remember how I mentioned this is the most repetitive Zelda game? Let's talk more about that. Key issue number 2. Repetition. One of the most fun aspects of every Zelda game is the enemy variety. Sure, not every game, but enough to make me consider it an integral part of the series. Knowing how to deal with each one, which ones to avoid when possible, all that. And by now you must have noticed that Skyward Sword looks you in the eye, says no to that, and gives you just 2 enemies 90% of the time. That remaining 10% are a few more enemies you see every now and then, bringing to light the first instance of repetition within the game. Every area has the same 2 enemies, Deku Babas, that open in different directions and you need to swing at them appropriately, and sound like volleyball balls when you don't, or the most used enemy in the game that you find literally everywhere, bokoblins. And when I say everywhere, I mean everywhere. They all work the same, fight the same, and scream the same. I wouldn't be so critical of 75% of all enemies being bokoblins if they didn't look so ugh. Breath of the Wild bokoblins look dumb and that makes them silly. Wind Waker bokoblins are pirates, so it fits the theme. Skyward Sword bokoblins look like that one person at the Thanksgiving table that you don't know who they are, what they are to you, where they came from, who invited them. They smell like a mix of hand sanitizer and old gravy. They're way louder than everyone else, and they eat the most out of all other guests, and are the first to leave without letting anyone know after taking at least 3 bags worth of leftovers, and you never see them again, and nobody else remembers them being present. Wow, that's a description if I've ever made one. Oh, and they have leopard print underwear. I don't know where else to place this or when to bring it up, so I'm just putting it on the table and looking the other way. Okay, sure, I'm exaggerating a little bit. There's a few more enemies here and there like Keese and Lizalfos, but they're so few and far between or die so easily that my brain barely registers them as present. It's always bokoblins, everywhere. And for what it's worth, the worst enemy design, without a doubt, goes to moblins. Their design is genuinely offensive. I'm not even gonna bother elaborating why. You be the judge. However, it's not just the basic enemies that are guilty of this issue. Both Girahim and the Imprisoned commit the same crime. Zelda games are known for having interesting, varied bosses, and Skyward Sword is no exception. It has some great bosses and even great mini-bosses. But then you realize you fight Girahim and the Imprisoned 3 total times each. Sure, they're slightly different every time with new moves and different looks, but you're still fighting the same characters, meaning that of all the bosses in Skyward Sword, 4 of them are repeat fights, and that is just not fun. It cheapens their impact, especially the Imprisoned, because the spectacle of a giant liver coming out of the ground is lost after the first time. And what's worse, every subsequent fight against the Imprisoned is worse and worse than the last one that The second fight against the Imprisoned was the first time I dropped Skyward Sword. It's that bad. It's very convenient that he waits for Link to arrive each time, though. And as for the worst instance of repetition, the 3 areas. On paper, having just 3 areas to explore isn't inherently a bad thing, especially considering how dense they all are, for which I commend Skyward Sword. They're all fun to explore. The first time, though, because you don't go to the area, do what you gotta do and leave, only to come back for completion's sake. You have to come back 3 total times to each area. The story is divided into 3 major segments: searching for Zelda, evolving the Goddess Sword into the Master Sword, and getting the Song of the Hero, and the bridge between each segment is a fight against the Imprisoned. The game essentially rewards you for finishing a repeated segment of the story with a repeated fight. Whenever I see a critique of Skyward Sword, it's always the controls that get singled out. Oh, the controls are the worst part of it. Yeah, the controls are terrible, I'm not making an excuse for them, far from it. But the repetition of the game is so much more insulting. You can deal with the controls, you can tough it out, but you can't escape the repetition. Going back to a place you were at a moment ago to fight a thing that you fought a moment ago is not fun. The monotony of this game is far, far, far worse than the controls. Round 2 of going to the surface, as I just mentioned, is all about turning the Goddess Sword back into the Master Sword by finding the sacred flames at the end of every dungeon. But this time around, before you can enter the dungeon, you have to go through the added steps that are the Silent Realms. Imagine if Zelda was a stealth game, but bad. That's that's the Silent Realms. The whole world loses saturation and Link becomes a ghost, and you need to find all these tears hidden around the area to fill up the spirit vessel. If you get spotted or take more than 90 seconds before finding another tear, the enemies will start chasing Link. And if they attack you once, you need to start over. Silent Realms aren't terrible, just bothersome. An extra step holding back progression to pad out the game time. And of course, you have to do the same thing in Eldin and Lanayru. This is Skyward Sword after all. You have to do everything at least 3 times. Have I successfully demonstrated how repetitive the repetitiveness of the repetition is in this game? Completing the 3 new dungeons of round 2 gives you the Master Sword, which does more damage and charges the Skyward Strike faster. And more importantly, it gives you the last few items you were missing. More than anything else, the items are, to me, the most important part of a Zelda game. They determine how the dungeons will go, what enemies you'll encounter, and what challenges you'll face along the way. They are an integral part of the Zelda formula. And this game's items are... they're functional. Skyward Sword introduces a new category of items aside from the standard progression ones: pouch items. These are equipable items that are not necessary to finish the game, but you should absolutely have them on you at all times. Classic items like the shield fall in this category, as well as bottles, but there's a few new ones like upgrades for the quiver or bomb bag, and medallions which increase the chances of specific enemy drops. These items you can drop off at the bazaar storage and take out whenever you need. It's a good system, if a little forgettable. I mean, aside from switching the shield out, why would I ever unequip it, you know what I mean? As for the actually important items, they all range from basic to okay. The bow and slingshot both work as expected. Point at the screen, hold down ZR, and shoot. Same as every other game. Bombs are slightly different in this game. You can pick up and pocket the ones you see growing around the world, which is nice, and instead of being able to just throw or place them, you can now roll them like a bowling ball. A very easy way to break your wrist. Ah! The Gust Bellows. A giant reverse vacuum that can blow infinite air. It's fine, I guess, useful enough, but every time I use it, I feel like I should be making a V60. Real talk, as I'm making this, it's 10 p.m. The Bugnet. It's a bugnet. Moving on. The Claw Shots. Exact same thing as in Twilight Princess or the Hook Shot. The Whip. For Pegasus Knights and Wyvern Riders level 10 and up. Used for flipping these giant switches or swinging around. Pro tip. Don't use this after rolling bombs. Oh! Lastly, the Beetle. A drone thing that you can move around freely by tilting the controller. This functions. You can use it to grab certain items or cut ropes, or just to get a sense of your surroundings. This is the best item in the game. Simple as that. Overall, not the best roster of items. There's much better out there. Until you realize, some of these items can be upgraded. Don't get your hopes up. They're not much better, but it's a nice idea. So we go back to the sealed grounds, fight the imprisoned with arms this time, and we take Link to the past through the giant gear Zelda used, and we see her and Impa, and we get quite the lore dump. But look, I'm not here to go into the deep lore talks of Skyward Sword. Honestly, I kind of just don't care for the story in this game. So instead, I will summarize everything Zelda said in one genuine, out-of-context clip from one of the streams back when Skyward Sword HD came out. Enjoy. I think the goddess created the most person in the universe, and the great blade she's a part of, for a very specific reason. For you to take me to McDonald's, god damn it. I don't know what I was on when I said that, but that is exactly what Zelda said. Okay, round 3 starts by going into the giant cloud meatball in the sky. It's been there from the start, just didn't care to mention it. Why, you ask? Key issue number 3. The sky. When the game starts, the sky is presented to you as this grand, impressive open world to explore with so much to see. And frankly, that first time you fly does feel, for lack of a better word, magical. But by the second time, it's nothing. It feels as empty as the sky, because guess what? There's nothing. There's more to explore in Baton Rouge. I'm not exaggerating here, there's barely anything to do, anything to see. The sky is such a large environment, and aside from Skyloft and the surface, there's a small handful of islands with people on them, and the rest are just floating rocks. And inside the Cloud Meatball, yeah, there's more to do, but it's too little too late. I've always believed it's because of the emptiness that so many people say Skyloft is one of the greatest areas in the series, because there's nothing else to compare it to. And it isn't. Sure, Skyloft is nice, but it's not Clock Town. But let's take a look at the sky and compare it to the ocean in Wind Waker. Both are vast open spaces with distant landmarks that you need to travel to. The ocean is so interesting to go through. The weather changes, as does time. If you see an island out there in the distance, there's almost certainly something to do in it. The ocean feels alive. It's fun to go through, even when you don't go anywhere in particular. The sky, a setting that on paper is more interesting than the ocean, is so barren and lifeless it serves no purpose other than a buffer between areas. Nothing would change if the sky was made into a loading screen like in a Spyro game. But what about those magic cubes that you have to hit with the Skyward Strike and they open up chests in the sky? Yeah, what about them? They show up on the map, you go there, you get the thing, and you're done. The main selling point of the game hinders itself by design. So inside the Cloud Meatball, the Not Windfish tells us to find 3 parts of the Song of the Hero. So you know what that means. Go back to all 3 areas you went to twice already to meet their respective dragons and do some favors for them. Go through a short dungeon in Lanayru and heal the dragon to have it sing at you. And get the Hylian shield while you're at it. Go through one more stealth section where you have to recover your items in Eldin, and watch the dragon in Farron cause irreversible environmental damage by flooding the area because there's a few monsters. Not sure if it's warranted. This, of course, is only after you fight the imprisoned a 3rd time. Have you forgotten what game we're playing? Right, so with the song, we go back up to Skyloft and do one more Silent Realm because 3 wasn't enough, and from this point on, the game gets good. Like, really, really good. Like, peak Zelda good. The final dungeon is the Triforce dungeon, where you get, you guessed it, the Triforce. Apparently, it's been inside the goddess statue all along. What a surprise. What sets it apart, though, is not the treasure at the end, but how you interact with the dungeon, because for the first time, the dungeon is interactable. It's a switch block puzzle, and you need to move the rooms around to access them. Open the shortcut and find your way to the Triforce rooms. It can be confusing, and I'd be lying if I said it wasn't tedious at times, but it's surprisingly fun to go through. The island the statue is on falls down from the sky, killing hundreds on the way down. It very conveniently fell right on top of the imprisoned at the bottom of the spiral at the perfect rotation. Love it when that happens. This is the beginning of the end of the game. Going once again to the past, Girahim uses Zelda to bring forth his true lord, Demise, the ultimate evil of all evils and the actual form of the imprisoned. Girahim is at the bottom of the spiral, and the game turns into a Hyrule Warrior stage on the way down. And we face Girahim one last time in what's admittedly a pretty good fight. Push him off the orange platforms to stab him. But it's too late. Demise was summoned. Wow, that's him? What's the opposite of a glow-up? He went from looking evil and menacing to looking like a liver. Well, liver is evil and menacing, but you know what I mean. As is tradition, he very kindly waits for Link to start fighting, giving you a chance to restock and heal up after the last fight. And going through the Kingdom Hearts Darkness portal, we end up in the final world. What? Hear me out. This is straight up the best final boss. No, the best boss in the series. Just the setting. Fighting up in the sky, the enemy looks like he won't hesitate to kill you. It's perfect. Phase 2 begins and Demise uses his sword as a lightning rod to attack you. But you can do the same to him. You can steal his thunder, pun intended, and that will stun him until he falls over, and then you strike him again until you... And thus, the Demon King Demise has been eradicated. Heading back to the temple, Bruce makes an unfunny joke, and the time has come to return the Master Sword to its rightful place. Fi says, "What?" I did it. Fi is gone. Fi. I don't care, whatever. Impa stays behind as we walk through the gear, and on the other side, the way to the Master Sword opens back up, dooming everyone once again to the curse that is Fi. And credits. Link and Zelda decide to stay on the surface protecting the Triforce, and that's it. It's over. Thank Hylia, it's done. I'm not trying to say Skyward Sword is the worst thing ever. I'm not even trying to say it's a bad game, barring how much the control issues or the repetition affects you. But I can't put into words how much I hate this game, and have hated it for well over a decade at this point. When the Switch version came out, as upset as I was because it was coming back, I was excited because I had a justifiable excuse to take another look at the game to see if I was in fact wrong all these years. I wanted to like it. I wanted to finish this video off by saying, "Hey fam, I'm Melly and I like Skyward Sword now." But I can't. My feelings for the game have been historically overwhelmingly negative, and this second playthrough reinforced that. I'm sorry. There's definitely good in this game. It looks good, the music's good, the dungeons are pretty good. But my three key issues against it, I just cannot look past even for a second. Plus, admittedly, my bias against this game completely overpowers the experience well past the point of being objective or being able to focus on the things I do like, so that's a me problem. With that said, I don't want to discourage anyone from playing Skyward Sword. If anything, you absolutely should play it, as it is a massively important part of the overall Zelda story. And with Tears of the Kingdom, 2 months away as I'm filming this, I think Skyward Sword is going to be even more important. All in all, this is just a mid-tier Zelda game. Its highs are highs, but its lows are... I am glad I never have to play through this game again. But why would future Melly want me to in the first place? Why would he go through the trouble of buying me a Wendy's for me to play a game that I love, and this one? What is he trying to achieve? Well, I've got no idea. So until then, hey fam, I'm Melly, and I hate Skyward Sword again. What? V? I thought you were in the Master Sword forever. Oh. Okay. Can you leave? Why? Oh. Oh no.